Hi everyone. My name is Maria, and I'm going to be presenting on Islamophobia in Italy. As Muslim populations in Europe have continued to expand, there's been a lot of significant social and political questions raised regarding Muslim integration into European nations. And among these questions, there's one that's kind of remained at the center of the conversation, which is, can Islam be European? And there are many that have answered no. They argue that the failure of Muslims to integrate fully demonstrates that Islam as a religion is inherently incompatible with Western norms and values. However, I believe that in order to solve this integration crisis, a change in perspective is needed. It's not solely a question of whether Islam can be European, but we have to ask ourselves whether or not Europe can be accommodated of Muslims. Islamophobia has been observed to be on the rise across Europe, and this has posed a pronounced barrier for Muslims to overcome as they try to integrate and assimilate. And in a time where we're risking an alienated Muslim youth that's susceptible to radicalization, identifying the root and the scope of these anti-Islamic sentiments is crucial. So I chose to use Italy as a case study. And through this presentation, we will explore the integration problem through the lens of Islamophobia, examining the degree to which it's present in Italy, and proceeding to identify where exactly it's manifested in Italian society. So as European Muslim populations continue to expand, current trends have indicated that Islamophobia is simultaneously on the rise across Europe. However, some recent studies have suggested that Italian Islamophobia is uniquely prevalent. So a recent Pew Research survey, which you can see on the left, claimed that Italians were among the most Islamophobic of all the European nationalities surveyed, with a shocking 69% reporting a negative view of Muslims. And this claim is supported by the statistics you can see on the right. This table shows the results of the work of Padovan and Alietti, who are two Italian sociologists, who in 2012, they conducted over 1,500 interviews with Italians of all different backgrounds and ethnicities. And they found that about 78% of Italians harbored some form of anti-Islamic sentiment to varying degrees. Half of this number were merely categorized as loyalists, indicating that they had a certain fidelity to a certain ethnic or national identity. But the other half, which is the bottom row, roughly 38% of those surveyed, were classified as intolerant. And the authors suggested that this subgroup was marked by a sense of superiority and the fear and suspicion that the subordinate races intend to weaken the prerogatives of the dominant race. So these statistics suggest the presence of Islamophobia in Italy, but where are these attitudes made visible? If it really does exist to such a degree as is argued by the sociologists, it must be made obvious in the various spheres of Italian society and culture. And this question is partly answered in the recent trends we're observing in Italian politics, particularly in the swell in popularity of far-right nationalist parties. One such party is titled Lega Nord, which you can see the logo of in the bottom left corner of this poster. And they are known across Italy for their anti-immigration and often xenophobic rhetoric. Political scientist and researcher Laura Cervi wrote that in Lega's 2018 electoral campaign, migrants, especially Islamic communities, were framed through increasingly explicit xenophobic and racist positions. Politicians targeted the Muslim community and attempted to propagate Islamic hate in order to gain votes, as you can see in this poster. Another statistic, the Amnesty International's Hate Barometer, documents hate speech by electoral officials, and it found that during that same election, 53% of the instances of hate speech made originated from Lega members, whose main target after the general category of immigrants was Muslims. So despite this obvious Islamophobia, Lega Nord has enjoyed massive popularity. This is the column that displays the percentage of votes that it garnered in the 2019 general election, and it stood out as Italy's most voted party. So the popularity of such a blatantly anti-Islamic party reveals the Italian public's fear and dislike of their Muslim communities. So we can also see that the villainization of Italy's Muslim minority is not just limited to politics. Cervi later wrote that in Italy, terrorism dominates the information of Muslims and Islam. So news outlets are searching for a spectacular and sort of like an eye-catching story. And so they disproportionately report on extremists and terrorists of Muslim backgrounds. So in effect, this biased reporting kind of frames the cultural group as dangerous and violent, and eradicates any sort of other alternative narrative. So this sentiment was later echoed by researcher Grazia Sino, who wrote that the Italian media have failed to report news in an ethical manner and have adopted a monolithic approach to the Muslim population, thus fostering hate speech and spreading fear and hatred. So essentially, news outlets in Italy have introduced and worsened Islamophobia by producing and reproducing harmful stereotypes and prejudices. So these are just a few of the headlines I was able to find in popular Italian newspapers just by searching the keyword Islam. And I translated all of them. And clearly, there's a disproportionate amount of just a negative portrayal of Muslims being put forward that sort of portrays them as violent and radicalist. Yeah. So this culture that has been created where Muslims are viewed in a generally negative light can have some really concrete repercussions. And instances of hate crimes and discrimination against Muslims in Italy are not uncommon. We especially saw a surge in these after the 2015 Paris attacks. There was just this onslaught of criticism and hatred from Italians towards their Muslim communities, even though they were not responsible for what had happened. Anti-Muslim sentiments sort of headlined political debates. Muslims were frequently defamed by journalists. The last slide, Bastardi Islamici, was the opening headline of the popular Italian newspaper Libero. And that drew both criticism from local Islamic communities and praise from far-right parties. We also saw that there were several mosques that were targeted by violent attacks, including those in Padova, Rimini, and Salerno. And in Tuscany, a pig's head was found impaled on a gate outside a Muslim place of worship. So nowhere does the systemic consequences of Italy's Islamophobia and anti-Muslim feelings stand out as much as in the religious sphere. So Muslims are about 1/3 of Italy's foreign population. But despite this, they have yet to be formally recognized as a religion by the state, unlike Judaism, Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism. And because they're unregistered, the abilities and rights of these Italian Muslims to practice their religion is restricted severely. So mosques don't receive public funding. Italian Islamic weddings have no legal weight in Italy, and Muslim workers aren't guaranteed days off for religious holidays. And this has proved devastating for the infrastructure of Muslims in Italy. So while there are over 1.6 million Muslims in Italy, there only exist 8 official mosques to cater to them. So this is obviously severely disproportionate. Just for an example, there are 400 mosques in the Netherlands that has 1.2 million Muslims, and 1,500 mosques in the UK, which has 4.13 million Muslims. The surge in immigration from primarily Muslim countries to Europe has caused conflict and polarization as Muslims have struggled to integrate and Europeans have struggled to adjust to the new religious minority in their midst. However, the Islamophobia that only grows in response to the failure of Muslims to assimilate is at least in part responsible for the exclusion of Muslims from European cultural and societal spheres. So through this presentation, we were able to confirm the presence of Islamophobia in Italy through sociological studies and political trends. And I believe that in order to ensure that Muslim integration is going to succeed, it's necessary that these sentiments are confronted and attended to. Thank you.